Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Seras and today I'll be going over my new updated version of my popular Sword and Sword Longbow build. The focus of this build is to deal a ton of damage via the conditions Burn, Bleed, Torment and Poison while maintaining a decent amount of survivability through high damage mitigation, decent evasion, stun break and stability. The build itself has great synergies throughout the build, which in the end makes it very strong and easy to use. Without further ado, let's move on to the next section of video. Rightio folks, in this section I'll be covering our equipment choices. First up for the stat selection we have the Rabid stats for our armor. Rabid stats are fan-flippin-tastic for our build as they give us good con D, we get good decent damage mitigation out of it, and they synergize well with a lot of our other choices in the build. The ruins we want, they follow a similar theme. They are the superior ruins of the undead. They synergize nicely with our build as well, giving just a whole heap of con D and toughness, and also because the majority of our stats going to be Rabid stats, we're going to have a lot of toughness as well, so the 6-piece bonus is giving us a whole bunch of extra con D as well. For our weapons, we have Rabid stats as well, and we're taking the Longbow and dual swords. In the Longbow, we have Superior Sigil of Doom and Earth. Doom grants us access to Poison, which is it's a con D that we don't normally have as a warrior, but with this we have access to it, and we're swapping quite often as well between our two weapons to make sure we're getting off all of our con Ds and just being more flexible in battle as well. With our weapon, with the Longbow, we also have the Superior Sigil of Earth, and that helps us keep our stacks up, our bleed stacks, which you can't normally do with the Longbow. This is due to a recent change in the feature patch where two-handed weapons, they get an extra sigil slot now, so we have both. And the cooldowns no longer conflict with each other, which is great. It means our dual shot, which it hits twice, so it has 2 chances to apply that Superior Sigil of Earth, which is great. For our swords, we want the Superior Sigil of Doom again, so if we ever switch back and that's the cooldowns worn off, we get the poison again, which is great. We love that poison. It's a healing debuff, which is very good, especially when fighting other warriors. And for our other sword, we want the Superior Sigil of Corruption. That gives us more con D damage. A trick we can do is we can also put a Superior Sigil of Corruption into one of our aquatic weapons. So then once we've reached maximum stacks, what you can do is swap out this sword with the Superior Sigil of Corruption in it for something else like a Superior Sigil of Earth or Torment, and you will still keep the stacks because you've got that stacking sigil inside one of your aquatic weapons. Okay, for our accessories we have the Dire Hybrid type ones. It's Dire Rabid Hybrid stats that you can get on as ascended accessories. They're pretty good. They give us, we only sacrifice a little bit of precision, so we're not hurt too much in our damage, but we gain some vitality, which you don't have through the rest of our stat selection. We don't need too much extra because we're a warrior, so we've already got a lot of vitality to begin with. We've got 20k HP, which is enough. Our back piece, we're going to have Rabid stats as well, same as the amulet, and the rings we want the Dire Rabid hybrids too, as they work out quite well. And in the end we end up with a whole bunch of condition damage. We're pretty hard to kill as well. And we have a high crit chance, so we can trigger a lot of the extra active effects in our build. Alright folks, let's move on to our utility skills. Alright, first up we have Healing Signet. Healing Signet is a very awesome heal even after the slight nerf that it received. This Signet works well as our damage is over time, so we can back off from our target and heal while our conditions do the work. It's mostly immune to being interrupted as it's a heal over time and you don't cast it. You can activate it for its heal, but I recommend only doing this in moments of desperation. But even then, if you do cast it, you're most likely going to die if you don't get away from the enemy or kill them in that time, because its active effect doesn't actually heal for that much at all. Our first utility we have is Berserker Stance. Originally this skill used to be very weak, but ever since it got buffed it became one of the most powerful utilities that we have access to. Berserker Stance provides immunity to conditions for 8 seconds and also provides you with 5 strikes worth of adrenaline per second during that time. The skill is amazing against most classes, even though everyone you fight is not going to be a condition class. they're still most likely going to be putting some conditions on you, and the extra adrenaline means more burst skills, which in turn means more condition cleanse and damage against the enemy too, making the skill overall very, very strong. Next up, we have Signet of Stamina. Signet of Stamina gives us a 50% endurance regeneration boost. Unlike other classes, the skill wasn't hit in the endurance regeneration nerf that lowered most of the 50% endurance regenerations to 25% instead. The active is also fantastic of the skill, because if the enemy decides to wait out your Berserker stance and then can't debomb you, what you can do is just cleanse all the conditions by activating your Signet of Stamina. It has a fairly low cooldown of being only 36 seconds with the trait involved, which makes it overall a very good skill. For our utility slot number 3, we have Doliac Signet. Doliac Signet provides us with a large 180 point boost to our toughness, allowing us to take more direct damage hits. Its active effect is a stun break, which also grants stability, which in turn helps us out a ton against any CC heavy builds. Overall, a good skill and plays well into our trait selection. For our elite skill, we're going to be running Signet of Rage. Passive Signet of Rage provides us with some extra adrenaline regen. It's pretty good, but the main thing we're after is the active effect, which grants us with 5 stacks of might, some fury and some swiftness that all last 30 seconds. Overall, it's a very great boost considering the alternative, which is Rampage, which is just a terrible, terrible skill. Anyway, if you're playing in a group, you can swap this out for War Banner. War Banner grants the same boons in an area around it and is able to rally down teammates. But it does have a very long cooldown to it as well, so you got to make that decision quite carefully. Unlike the Signet of Rage, which however has a very short cooldown thanks to our traits. It's 48 seconds, I think, the cooldown, so the boons will last almost the entire cooldown, allowing you to pretty much have permanent fury and swiftness and have a good boost of might at the same time. That there covers our slot skills, so let's move on to our weapon skills. So the first weapon sets we'll be covering is the swords. The first skill in it is the auto attack chain. The auto attack chain provides us with some constant bleed pressure to the enemy and some soft CC to cripple. It's a great skill to use when your other skills are on cooldown or waiting to be used at the appropriate time when you've got your swords out. Our number 2 skill is Savage Leap. Savage Leap is a gap closer which applies a snare at the end of the leap to the enemy. It has a fairly short cooldown and can be used to jump over gaps that you couldn't normally jump over. The leap has a bit of height to it as well, so you can use it to leap up some objects. You can also use it to cover distances faster by not having auto target on in the options menu, so you don't, when you hit it, you don't just target a random mob and go towards it, you'll just go straight forward instead. Our number 3 skill is Final Thrust. Final Thrust does a big burst of direct damage to targets under 50% HP. I recommend only using this to finish off opponents if you get the chance, as we're not in a power build so the damage isn't too high. It does work well as an execute and the cooldown is fairly low. You just have to watch out for it's got a bit of a wind up animation to it, so you can miss. What you can do with it is if you hit F1, then you can cancel out of it and use Impale, because the target will be immobilized, so it'll be a bit easier to land it. For our number 4 skill, we have Impale. It's extremely powerful for our build. It applies 5 stacks of long duration torment in quick succession, and on top of that it's a projectile finisher. It can be applied at range and does a massive amount of damage to moving targets. Most players will move when you attack them, so they'll end up copying a huge amount of torment damage per second. Without it being cleansed, the skill will end up doing about 17k unmitigated damage over its duration if they're moving, which is great. The duration also lasts for about as long as the cooldown is, so that you can, once it's up, you can just throw it again and then they've got more torment on them. For our number 5 skill, we have Riposte. Riposte will provide you with a block against range attacks until it blocks a melee attack for a short duration. If it does block a melee attack, it will then counter with 4 stacks of bleed that last for a long duration. If you don't trigger it for the duration of the block, or if you activate it a second time, it will grant you some additional adrenaline. Okay, for our burst skill on the swords, we have the skill Flurry. Flurry puts a long duration immobilize on the targets in front of you, and then channels a multi-hit ability that just does a ton of bleeds on them. Be wary when using the skill, as you can cop a lot of retaliation damage in return if they've got retaliation on them. At the same time, due to its nature of being a multi-hit ability, you've got a whole bunch of chances to get an extra amount of adrenaline back from using the skill, and you've also got more chances to apply some bonus bleeds. Overall, if you catch the target in a full flurry, they'll begin to feel its effects straight away with just rapid HP loss, as it stacks just a huge ton of bleeds, each with short durations on them. Okay, with the sword skills covered, let's move on to the Longbow. Our auto attack skill with the Longbow dual shot fires 2 arrows at the target while doing some minor damage. Due to its multi-hit nature, it can provide us with up to 4 strikes of adrenaline and 4 chances at additional bleeds, giving us some extra ranged condition pressure. Dual shot is also a projectile attack, so it can apply some burning through our fire fields. Our second skill with the Longbow is Fan of Fire. Fan of Fire shoots out 3 piercing arrows that apply burning in a cone shape. It's best used at point blank range, as this allows you to hit your main target with all 3 arrows. Skill number 3 for the Longbow is Arcing Arrow. Arcing Arrow deals ground target direct damage in an AoE, and is also a burst finisher. Works great when used in our fire field as we get some additional might stacks. For skill 4 we have Smouldering Arrow. Smouldering Arrow applies a blind in an AoE on and around the target. It's great at annoying an enemy or building up adrenaline when there's a lot of targets present. For skill number 5 we have Pin Down. Pin Down is a very powerful skill that applies a long duration immobilize and 6 stacks of bleeding to our target. It's a great skill for our build as it can keep targets inside our fire field while maximizing our burning and also potentially dealing a lot of damage over time. The skill itself pierces targets, so if you target the enemy at the back, you'll be able to pierce through all of them and they will all be immobilized and all get the 6 stacks of bleeding on them. Our final skill for the Longbow is Combustive Shot. Combustive Shot is a burst skill and it is absolutely amazing. It provides us with a fire field on the ground that applies a massive amount of burning. The fire field lasts longer than at the actual cooldown of the skill itself, so it allows you to chain combustive shots on the ground if you have the adrenaline for it. The skill works great in creating a space for you to fight in where you can deal constant damage to the enemy, and it also works great in creating some area denial. If you use Savage Leap in the fire field with the sword, you'll be able to bring the burning with you to the enemy if they leave the circle. Alright, for our traits we want to go 6 into arms, 4 into defense, and 4 into discipline. This trait spread gives us access to some of the fantastic and very synergetic traits for our build. First up we have Precise Strikes, which is our minor adept trait in the arms line. It gives us a chance to cause bleed on crit. The damage from this trait adds up to a decent amount during the fight, and it also synergizes well with our trait and stat selection. Our next trait, Deep Cuts, adds to our bleed duration by 50%, giving us a major damage boost to our build through longer lasting bleeds on both the swords and the Longbow. This also affects our Precise Strikes trait as well, making it much stronger. The third trait we get from the arms line is Critical Burst. Critical Burst increases our crit chance with our burst skills by 10%, creating more opportunities for us to stack on some additional bleeds and gain adrenaline from our burst skills. The Master Minor trait in the arms tree that we select is Deep Strike. Deep Strike provides us with extra precision for each signet with its passive up, which works well with our build due to us incorporating a lot of signets. The extra precision once again means more bleeds and adrenaline for us. If you're fighting a very Condi Cleanse heavy opponent, then you can swap this out for Rending Strikes instead to get an additional cover condition, which is Vulnerability. For our Grandmaster Minor trait we have Attack of Opportunity. Attack of Opportunity adds 10% extra physical damage to attacks which have a bleed on them. As we almost always have a bleed on the target, this is pretty much always going to be active. Our Grandmaster trait in the arms line Furious works greatly into our build. Due to our high crit chance, we gain back a lot of adrenaline thanks to this trait. The trait itself adds an additional strike of adrenaline each time we crit, which can work well with our many multi-hit abilities. More adrenaline for us means more chances to use our burst skills, which then leads on to more damage and more condition cleanse overall. So this trait is a very powerful trait for us to take. Because our burst skills hit multiple times as well, we gain a chunk of adrenaline back every time we use our burst skills. First up in the defense tree we are given Thick Skin. Thick Skin gives us extra armor when we're above 90% HP. This trait allows us to absorb the initial blows better in combat. Being a minor trait, we don't really have much choice over it if we want the traits further down in the line, so it's better than nothing really. For trait 2 in the defense tree we have Dogged March. Dogged March lowers the durations of incoming movement and parrying conditions by 33% and gives us extra regen when they are cast on us. This trait allows us to move around more unimpeded and also receive some extra healing when they try to slow us down. Our Master Minor trait in the defense tree is a very nice trait called Adrenal Health. As our adrenaline bar rapidly fills up past certain stages, we gain more and more health regen from this trait. Since we are always rapidly building adrenaline in this build, we get a good use from the regen created by this trait. This trait stacks nicely on top of our healing signet and regen from Dogged March. Last but not least, in the defense tree we have Cleansing Ire. Cleansing Ire was a new trait introduced last year that works absolutely fantastic with this build. Due to our rapid build-up of adrenaline and constant use of burst finishes, we are able to make great use of the primary function of this trait. Cleansing Eye cleanses 1 condition per adrenaline bar spent, which means we can cleanse up to 3 conditions each time. Due to the low cooldown of our burst skills, we're able to do this a lot, making it very hard for a condition-based class to fight us in this build. The adrenaline function spent also means that we don't even have to hit a target with our longbow, as it will always expend the adrenaline when we use the burst skill. Due to our inherent tankiness from our high toughness, we are also able to make good use of the adrenaline gain when hit function of this trait as well. Overall, this trait synergizes really well with our build, making it our #1 choice for the defense tree. First up in Discipline, we have Versatile Rage. Versatile Rage provides 5 strikes of adrenaline every time we weapon swap. This trait works really well in our build, as we're constantly swapping back and forth between both weapon sets to get the most of all of our adrenaline gain, and to make sure that even if the target runs out of our melee range, we're still safe and they can't just kite us to death. For Trait 2 in Discipline, we take Warrior's Sprint. Warrior's Sprint increases our speed by 25% when we have a melee weapon out, which is fantastic for keeping up with an opponent in combat or just wandering around the map so we don't feel so slow. It's a very nice trait that fits nicely into our build. Our Masterminder trait in Discipline is Fast Hands. Fast Hands is a very powerful trait for the warrior, which other classes would kill to get their hands on. Well, except for them engineers, them and their damn weapon kits. Anyway, Fast Hands reduces the cooldown of our weapon swap by 5 seconds, which allows us to get easy access to all of our weapon skills. With the skills on hand, we are able to rapidly adapt to most situations, which is absolutely fantastic. Our final trait for Discipline is Signet Mastery. Signet Mastery reduces the cooldowns of all of our signets, of which we have quite a few of them. This allows us to have a very high uptime for our Signet of Rage, and also use the active effects on our Dilag Signet and Signet of Stamina, without much to worry about. Overall, a very decent trait to have in our build. Alright, that there covers the traits. As you can see, we have a decent spread of traits that all synergize very decently, making our build very strong. The Liadri fight returned today, so I figure why not include it here, as this was the build that I used to kill it last time she came around too. I'll include some links to the build in action here too if you'd like to watch them as well. Well, there we have it folks, a new and improved version of my Sword and Sword Longbow build. I found that this build just works brilliantly and has been affected very little by the nerfs that the warrior has received since last time. I hope you all enjoy the build and have many great successes with it. If there's demand for it, I'll create and post up some gameplay vids of the build with commentary. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions or requests, please leave them below in the comments section and I'll see what Bird and I can do about them. If you enjoyed the build, please like, favorite, share and subscribe to our channel as we greatly appreciate it. This has been Seras broadcasting onto YouTube from Hamilton, New Zealand, and I'll see you next time.